Have you ever thought about airbrushing but didn't know where to start? In this video, I'll be covering what an airbrush is, the different types of airbrushes, what you'll need to get started, and what you can expect to spend if this is your very first time. Hey guys, Chris Vitas with 3x5 Artist. On this channel, I'll be bringing you weekly tips, tutorials, techniques, as well as my airbrush creation videos. I'll be showing you the tools that'll help get you on your journey to creating art with an airbrush. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. All right, let's get back into the meat of why you're here. Obviously, you want to know what you need to get started in order to learn airbrushing. And you don't need to spend a lot of money or buy a ton of stuff. But I wanted to explain to you what the airbrush is, how it's classified, the types of compressors, and what you'll need to paint. So there are three things, obviously, that you're going to need before you ever get started. One is going to be the airbrush. The airbrush is classified in two different styles as far as the trigger action goes. Trigger action can be single action or it can be double action. Double action is going to be the one that I recommend to most people, just because single action, you're gonna play around with that, and then you're gonna move up to a double action anyway. Not to say that it doesn't have its places, but for artwork and detailed work and things like that, you're definitely going to be migrating to a double action anyway. And what a single action is you can only press the trigger down to get air. The paint is dialed in with a little dial on the back of the airbrush, and wherever you set that, when you press air, that's what you get. So you can think of it basically like a spray can. You don't have any way to control a spray can. You basically just press the top down and you got paint, right? So that's basically what a single action airbrush is. Now the dual action, which is what I recommend, you have two controls that are built in. One is to press the trigger down, which will give you your air. As you pull the trigger back, that is what controls the paint. So if you pull it back just a little bit, you're only going to get a little bit of paint. If you pull it back all the way, you're going to get full paint. So you can actually, between the air pressure and the amount of trigger pull, can get very fine lines or very wide patterns. So I'd recommend, obviously, a dual action airbrush for anybody that wants to learn, because you might as well learn with that. So the other thing that the airbrush can be broken down into is the type of feed that it has. Gravity feed systems, where the paint is drawn into the airbrush from a color cup, also called the fluid cup, mounted on top of the airbrush. It's called gravity feed because the force of gravity helps spray material move through the airbrush, and this allows the airbrush to spray at a lower air pressure. This feed style requires smaller amounts of paint and utilizes every drop, making it economical to use and easy to clean. The second feed style is the side feed system, which is still a gravity feed. It sprays material from a color cup or a bottle through the side of the airbrush. The side feed cup and the bottle are available in a wide range of sizes, may be attached to each other on the left or the right side of the airbrush. And some of the users feel that this side feed gives them better visibility of the work, especially when painting details, because you can look right down the barrel without having the cup in the way. The third category for the feed is siphon feed. The siphon feed system, the paint is drawn up from the jar or a color cup from underneath the airbrush. Unlike the gravity feed, the siphon feed airbrush, the compressor must do all the work, and more air pressure is required to spray the material. The siphon feed is preferred when using large amounts of spray medium, usually preferred to t-shirt artists and things. Airbrushes can range anywhere from $10 for the cheapest ones that you can find online to over $1,000 just for the airbrush. So you don't want to invest that kind of time and effort into something that you're not going to use. So the second thing you're going to need to think about is your compressor. Now, just starting out, the smallest one you can get, as long as it can maintain 20-30 psi of air and the airflow to keep up with your airbrush, you should be fine. At least to figure out if you like this or not. And you can get those fairly cheap. The third thing you're going to need is a paint set, some kind of paint. Now, there's numerous types of paint out there. I recommend, as far as a beginner, just because of being able to clean easy, swap paint easy, definitely go with a water-based paint just to get started. Once you learn and you decide to go down another path, you can definitely do whatever you want, but at least by then you'll know what path you want to go down, and you can find other resources to answer the questions that you need. But to get started, those are the three things that you're going to need. They have kits online that you can buy that are relatively cheap. So we're talking anywhere from right around or close to $100 up to $400 for a complete kit, which has everything you need. So just to get started, I'd recommend mid-range between $100 and $200. Comes with a single or multiple airbrushes, plus the paints, the compressor, and everything you're going to need to try this out. Go through the practice rounds, get your control, learn how to use that airbrush before you move on to the next step. And if you find out this is really for you, then you can start researching what direction you want to go, whether that's cakes, miniatures, models, illustration, or auto body, murals, full-fledged custom paintings worth stuff. There's a lot of different things you can do. The other thing I wanted to talk about is safety. You don't have a studio set up. You're not a professional. You don't have all these things. So what do you need as far as safety? The function of an airbrush is to atomize the paint and put it into the air, hence the term airbrush. So by doing that, you get a lot of overspray, you get things in the air. So one of the things you really need to consider at a bare minimum is a mask. You want a respirator, if possible, dust mask. They make airbrush masks, things like that, so you don't breathe these chemicals. The airbrush is capable of spraying anything, but I recommend, at least to begin with, only using the water-based because, one, they're safer, they're not flammable. You don't have to worry about that overspray and everything being in the air and starting a fire. So with that portion, you need also some exhaust. These chemicals can be toxic. They're not, so you want to be safe with the water base and minimize that hazard, and then also have an exhaust fan, whether it's a well-ventilated room or just a box fan with a 20 by 20 furnace filter taped to it that will pull those particles away from you and into that fan. And that's at a minimum. They do have spray booths and things like that, but for the most part, as long as you keep your pressure low and you learn how to do it, you can airbrush at a desk without creating a huge amount of overspray that you would be breathing. But again, I always recommend using a mask while you're airbrushing to prevent breathing that. You don't want to take that stuff into your lungs. So I hope that answers all your questions. If you do have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments down below. And the other thing is, I will put down in the comments links and descriptions of items that you can find as far as kits, airbrushes, paints, things like that. So if you decide that that's the route you want to take, you can look them up and see what's available out there to get you started. Thank you so much for checking out my video. If you found this video helpful, give it a like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. Until next time.